Hello everyone, welcome back. Yeah, we're going to continue along here. So where we left off, we had just added in this bar, this horizontal bar underneath. I'm going to go ahead and add in the second and third bar as well as these rounded bits. These are all kind of micro details in a sense, like I understand that, but they also serve a purpose as far as the keyboard. Like they are wrapped around it in very certain ways, so this is still part of the keyboard. Things like this, I just know if I don't do it right now, I'm going to skip over it entirely. But we should be able to get through those like pretty quickly. Like the most intricate part is like this, which is just a couple of extrudes. So from there, I want to kind of lay out the keys, and we're not going to really connect everything, but even having them laid out is going to really sell the spacing on this a lot better. And maybe we'll have to pull this forward and adjust some things, but we'll see. Even just like slightly adjusting this, adding the bolts and putting a bar here has like made it feel a lot more full. So we have this second bar. I just sort of put this here as just a placeholder, really. This is just a duplication of this guy, so I'll just completely start that over, I guess. So I duplicated it. What I want to do though, there's all these extra edges that we added in. I'm just going to go ahead and remove them. Kind of just want to start from a fresh place overall. And we'll get them on this side as well. Control backspace. I'm going to really quickly check if this is recording. It usually has a symbol on the top of my screen. It is not there right now. This recording, let's see, started 3 minutes ago. Okay, makes sense. So let's continue along. We have this cylinder, and if we look at this reference, we can see that it goes pretty much level with the center of these feet here. So let's just go ahead and we can even just hold V and snap this to the middle. And if we notice in this reference here, they don't really seem lined up. Like this one's definitely higher, and this secondary one we're working on now is a little bit lower. So we can go ahead and even bring that down a little bit. So something very much like that. Of course, I'm going to want to punch a hole into the side, sort of give it a position to actually be carved into. But we have some other shapes here. We sort of have this thing wrapping around and connecting up to the top. It's present on both sides. We have these larger pieces, but these are attached to certain keys, so we'll get to that later on. And it also has this connection piece, which is very similar to a different one we already have made. So we'll get those in there in just a moment. Right now, let's just focus on doing our sort of puncture through. So I'm going to go ahead and Control D to duplicate this guy. I'm going to scale it up a tiny bit and scale it along the x-axis a little bit. So it's a little bit longer and a little bit thicker. Let's go ahead and isolate these. Freeze transforms, lead history on them. And yeah, we'll select both of them. New Boolean, clean up, delete history and base objects. Seems like these meshes, the more complex these meshes are getting, the more errors they're having. So it's not properly puncturing, but we can just extrude this in. Shift right click, fill hole. Can snap these and snap these. Because yeah, I've mentioned it before, but if these meshes didn't have any holes in them or anything like that, like it would actually do a proper Boolean where it would look more like this than just a hole. Oh well, we will be taking care of all of that stuff as we do our low poly and as we do our UVs. like that stuff will be found out. Right now we just need to get something that works and gets into ZBrush. So merge those guys. Nice. So now we have that going in there. Cool. Let's go back to our reference. So we have this piece that's wrapping up, and it means it's attached to something above, which leads me to believe that this kind of extrudes out and back a little bit. So what I'm going to do for this is kind of cut from here to here, take these faces, extrude them down a little bit, extrude them down a little bit more so we get a line going across, and then extrude this back. So we'll see how that goes, because I know we're going to have to cut some lines into this at some point. So like these lines here. But we should be able to have the best of both worlds as long as these connection pieces that we're putting right here are off to the side, because there won't be any lines going through the side, obviously, because that's where the keys are going through. So that should be fine, and of course the keys can only puncture through this middle section if I'm not mistaken. No, they are going all the way. Almost entirely across, which could be a problem for our current setup, because we do have this whole section here. This is the time for me to look at this 3D model. Yeah, they have theirs going all the way across as well. Okay, let's isolate these guys and come up with a solution to this problem. I mean, one potential solution is to just take this bottom part and like delete all this stuff, or at least push it in a little bit. Because when we look at this, it doesn't go all the way to the end, just mostly to the end. So, let's start by cutting there. I'm just holding Shift and Control with the cut tool out. That's even on both sides, and then we'll just sort of push this part in there. We'll do that by, first of all, gutting this central part. Deleting that. Next we can select these pieces, and I'm going to Shift right click extract faces, something we haven't been using a ton this whole tutorial. Let's go ahead and center pivot, move the pivot down here, snap it along. What's the top looking like? Okay, the top's open, so that's good. Just means we're gonna have to cut out some spaces for it. We can fill this up. So bridge, we have an inverted face there. Okay, that could have been causing problems. Can fill this hole. Just close that off. But most importantly, we need to trace this shape out. Cut, 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 close. Okay, snap there, snap there, snap there. Just going to close that off there. And then delete these faces. Okay, so we should be able to mesh combine, merge vertices, and that should ultimately, yeah, give us all this space here where we can now take this and kind of add a cut. Level that out and just cut all the way around. You'll see that this will then let us extrude everything. So I'm gonna have to straighten this all out though. And then yeah, I can take this and extrude it and have it just like we initially had it, but now we have much more space along the bottom. We did do a significant amount of work on this to the point where I'm just going to duplicate it over. So put the pivot in the middle, freeze, transform, delete history, mirror along X, and then I'm just going to close up this hole. Honestly, probably the quickest way to deal with this. So delete everything in the middle, shift right click, fill hole, and then we can just select these two holes. Holding control, we can right click two edges and then control backspace to delete all of those edges. It seems like we have messed something up pretty horribly. Let's go ahead and merge vertices really quick. Okay, so this is a case where we just haven't had enough edges connecting everything, and Maya just kind of freaked out. So that's that face. It won't even let me select that edge. Weird. Let's just go back. When does it freak out like that? Oh, I understand. Because we tried to mirror it, but there's no cut across the middle. So now with a cut across the middle, this face isn't going to get deleted. Nothing weird is going to happen. Okay. Makes sense. Freeze, transform, delete history, mirror along X, merge vertices. Okay, we're looking good. We'll just have to do this again really quickly. So delete, select the edges and fill hole, select the faces, control right click to edges, and then delete the edges. I'll delete these ones too. Okay, I'm glad that wasn't some kind of like file bug or something. But that gives us a lot more space where we can cut out from. Gives us a bit of a safety net, which is nice. But we still have to work on these pieces. They're very off to the side. But yeah, they seem to be attached up here. Did I just mirror over the wrong thing entirely? I think I did. Oh my god. We're trying to mirror over this. Damn it. I'm just going to delete this part. Delete all of that. This should be pretty simple. I guess we did have to mirror over both because we were making changes. But I'm just going to smart duplicate this. I'm going to flip it to -1 in the scale on X. Should slide in perfectly, if I'm not mistaken. Just to be safe though, what I'm going to do is put my pivot into like one of these verts. snap it onto the side. Connect some of these guys up that aren't connected. Everything else seems to be connected fine. But now we can go ahead and do mesh, combined, merge all the verts. And now it should be good. Now if we isolate these guys. Yes, okay, now we have all this extra space. Very good, very good. Yeah, cool. So what I was saying earlier was this piece here looks very similar to something we've already made. That being this guy here. So what I wanted to do was just duplicate this and put that in that position. So I'm going to Control D. It's multiple parts, so I'm going to hit Control G to put into a group. And we can just sort of position this guy roughly before the part where it connects to the wall. I'm not quite sure why the pivot is all the way over here. It's acting like something else is selected, which is bizarre. I'm just going to freeze transforms and delete history on everything, and then maybe... Okay, now it's centered. No, it's not. Okay. I'm just going to regroup them. Going to rotate this 90 degrees. Just snapping it into position. And then scaling this up so it's around it. So it seems to be a lot smaller, so we can sort of adjust it a little bit. Easiest way is, once again, if I select all of these, I can then go to vertex by holding off, and let's just select these guys, sort of pull it in like so. It's a much smaller piece. And I can just sort of have it there on the end. Next, what we're going to have to do is create these sort of like pieces going up, sort of connecting onto here, which should be pretty straightforward. The only thing to note is there's a hole going through and about a bolt going now, or a bolt going down through the bottom area. Excuse me. Pretty simple though. I'm just going to start with a cube and isolate this because I just want to get it centered. So just snapping that to the middle. Seems to be quite a bit larger. I'm just noticing now that this side is puncturing through. If I select these parts, I can snap it to the edge. Like right here. I'm just going to trim this part down. Just going to test this. Bridging across, bridge and fill hole. So this has a bit of a visual impact on the front, but I think we can fix it up by taking these two guys and extruding them out. Delete the top so it can merge properly. That means the back is in a good position. And then if we isolate that, yep, that's what we're going for. Merge everything. Snap that down. Okay, let's do the same on the other side. I like keep avoiding that other piece. I'm trying to do it. I just keep noticing little things from last part that we didn't quite get or didn't quite catch because we weren't having our camera at this angle. But I just don't want geometry jamming into geometry. It's like really not natural. So we're gonna just bridge that across. Same there, same there, same there. If I remember correctly, we just delete that. Put that across. And that should mean that this is flush and this is flush. Okay, back to this guy. This part's really easy anyways, so it's not like me avoiding it is gonna drain a lot of our time or anything like that. It's a bit skinnier. All we have to do is just bevel these edges, so Control B. Turn the fraction segments up. I might even bring it all up a little bit. And it's definitely a bit further this way. I like if these, I would like if these two pieces were attached so they get a nice weld mark. So I'm going to bust out the cut tool, trace around it and close it off. Then add an additional line. Delete that. Delete that. Before I merge it, I'm going to duplicate this so we have one for the other side. Actually, the fastest way is if I were to cut my boolean for this right now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll fill this hole right back up so it doesn't mess with the boolean. So Control D to duplicate this. We'll isolate both of these guys. I'll grow it a tiny bit. And then freeze transforms, delete history, new boolean, cleanup, delete history and base objects. Okay. Want to work smart, not hard. If we can duplicate things around, we should. And this is definitely one of those cases. So okay. And then I'm going to want to press D, move the pivot to the middle, freeze transforms, mirror that along X, so we have one directly on the other side. We'll cut a hole here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Snap that vertice there. Add an extra cut there. And we'll start to snap these verts to be exactly on top of the new piece so we can merge them easily. Then gonna mesh combine. Merge vertices. And if I isolate this, it seems like something's going on here with the shading. Doesn't want to soften. Oh, no, it does. Sometimes it's just the two vertices are on top of each other and they're not merged, so softening seems to be doing it, which is great. We did not add in the bolt, but I guess we can do both of those simultaneously, even though, once again, it probably would have been smoother to just do it and then duplicate it around. Nevertheless, it takes 2 seconds. So, poke face. Or we don't even have to do that. In this case, I'm just going to use my plugin to, with this face selected, immediately drop a cylinder directly on top of my selection. I'm going to have it low, because it seems like it's pretty low here. Gonna make sure it's not poking through. Rotation seems to be like a little bit off. It's like pointed down a little bit, but that should be fine. So freeze, transform, delete history. Standard Boolean. Cleanup, delete history and base objects. And then it seems like we're gonna have to just extrude this back. Fill hole. Poke hole. This is one that's easy to duplicate, so I'm just going to boom, delete, center pivot. We're going to mirror that guy over X once again, make sure we merge everything. And then this is the third time we're doing this, so I don't feel the need to really explain it, but fill hole, grab the edges from the faces. We're back in business. Now we have these holes in both of them, which you can put screws into. You can borrow a screw maybe from here. Or rather, I guess we could probably... No. I was going to grab a screw from there, but they seem to be angled. So let's just use a fresh one. Just going to change the rotation back to world. And once again, this is just such a tiny piece that will probably never be seen. But the thing is, all these little details really add up, and this whole tutorial is about not really cutting corners. Obviously there have been times where we've saved time where we could, but things like this, I find to just be pretty important as far as having all the little things stack up. So let's move on to this next bar. Pretty simple up into this part, but we can just borrow a piece that we've already made, so should be pretty straightforward. It seems to be pretty centered. It seems to be underneath this guy, this bar that we've already made. So I'm going to take this, Control D, move it. It seems to be a bit forward from it, so it'll just be a little bit ahead. We're going to have to Boolean through again, so I'm going to duplicate this one. Scale it up a little bit. Seems to already be puncturing through, which is great. Let's isolate these guys. Freeze, transform, delete history, just to make sure our Boolean is a little bit more reliable. New Boolean operation. Clean up, delete history and base objects, and nice. We got a hole punching through. Can just do a little extrude, make it deeper actually. This part's so thick we can definitely afford to do it. And extrude this part in. And then that guy should be slotted in there really nicely. So yeah, looking at this, There's a bit of a lip there, which could be interesting to make. That piece is pretty simple. Yeah, so it seems to extrude in and then have a spring. The thing that I'm focused on right now is how each end kind of has a lip to it. So I'm going to try my best to emulate that by hitting bevel, then grabbing these edges, and I wanted to bevel it super thin for a reason. It's because I'm going to pull this out. I want to do the same on the other side, so I'm going to have to grab this. I didn't bevel the right edges. Okay. There's got to be a better way to do this. I wonder if I could just hit Shift period to... No, gross selection isn't going to work. I could grab these faces and go to 2 edges, 2 edge perimeter, and then... No, it won't let me quickly deselect these guys either. Two edge loop. No. Okay, we're just going to manually select it then. Which is a bit of a bummer, but sometimes this kind of stuff happens. Of course, if this wasn't a giant n-gon or a face with more than 4 sides, we wouldn't have to deal with this, but this is just kind of the stage of modeling we're at right now. Okay, so we have them all now, so Control B. So we'll bevel it just a tiny bit. But now we're going to want to grab these edges again, which I know is like mega tedious. But it's going to get that effect we're going for, of just kind of like a little bit of a rimmed lip around everything. Okay, so I go to my scale tool. Scale it all up a little bit. Now it's going to be easier because we can just select the edge loop. And let's get that back into reference, or back into view. So Control E, play with the thickness a little bit, 0.1, and then offset it with like 0.01. Maybe this is a 0.05, but it's a little bit of a lip, which I think is nice. You soften it. Obviously this is like not good, but you can see that it's going to soften into something nicer in Zbrush, and then when we bring everything back, it has like a proper slot to go into. Nice. Happy with that. The only other thing that we need to worry about, or there's 2 things, is these guys, which is pretty simple to put together, these extrusions, and then the spring to the side. So I'm going to keep this here as far as like a positioning reference. But let's start with adding a cut to the middle. We've done similar stuff before. Of course, doing this so I can bevel it, and then have 2 edge loops equal distance apart. I want this to be the sort of sunken in area. So it seems like it's thinner for the majority of it. But I can grab these edges, Control E, thickness I can go like minus 0.075, so it's going in a little bit. Then there's like a ring after a little bit of time on each of these. Holding Shift, that's as far as it lets me go. Should be the same on this side because it is even. When We can then bevel both of these, put out like a 0.075. I'm just making this ring here. Extrude it. .15 seems to be good. But let's go ahead and Shift P to grow selection. Scale this all in a little bit to get it tighter. And yeah, that seems to be the shape of everything. It seems to be stretched out quite a bit more. Like this space here isn't as large as how I currently had it, but this seems like a good distance for it all. And then there's just a matter of that spring. Which we can take from right here. Duplicate, center pivot, freeze transform, delete history. Let's isolate these guys. I can just snap this to the middle. Make sure there's enough room for this to go through. Shrink this down actually. And have this just sort of pressed up against here. You can't really see the lip this way, so I want it to be more clear. I like that little detail, so I'm going to keep it like so. I'm going to give it a color as well, because it's probably going to be forgotten if it's underneath everything. But yeah, that's that little detail. The only other thing before the keys are these guys, which should be pretty simple. Let's line everything up so we're looking at it from the same view. And in doing so, I'm starting to see that this is supposed to be on this side. Not that that really makes that big of a difference, but these guys here, like right in this section, it also seems like these are a lot more pushed forward. Like all of this, including the holes, so maybe I'll do that. So I want to get a better side profile of what's going on inside. Excuse me, just so I have a good idea as to like why everything is the way it is. Because these, how do they interact with that bar on the bottom? This is the bar here. They go down and they go up in front of it. But some of these pieces continue to the back and interact with this. Yeah, it only seems like a few of these sort of arms are interacting with it, but it definitely seems more forward. It seems much more like kind of like here. Because these humps are kind of in line with where these gears are. So I guess we're really not moving them that far forward, but just enough to kind of make a bit of a difference. Okay, let's just line everything up. Nice. As for these bumps, they should be relatively simple to put in. What I'm going to do, which is kind of a pretty ghetto way of doing it, is manually cutting in squares like this, but I'll show you my reason for this in a second. Because if I flatten these out so that they're all perfect, and it seems to be pretty short overall, kind of like that. I can just sort of obviously extrude and then bevel that in, but I can do this and then just sort of cut out the same shape on the other side. So I'm just going to start off by making one. So I'm extruding. Extruding. It's kind of like this. Close. This is definitely more squared off. Because it like comes to a fine roundness. And I can pull this back. And it kind of seems a bit more rounded like that. Is it shorter as well? From the bottom, it's looking the same, which is nice. Just give it some more anchor points. The purpose of these, I'm not really sure, because it's like open. It doesn't seem like anything's actually going through it. But maybe that'll change once we have the keyboard sort of implemented. Either way, we're going to have to puncture a hole into it. So let's get a cylinder. Oh, I can still change this. Nice. I didn't realize with this plugin I could still change the subdivisions on everything. So we'll have that going all the way through. Freeze transform, delete history, new Boolean operation. Clean up, delete history and base objects. Hopefully we can bridge this smoothly. It's giving us some errors for not having an even amount of faces to bridge. So I'm just going to hit G to manually bridge everything over. Is it this tiny one? Yeah, that's what it is. If we clean this up, it should let us do it properly. Because it's like these little edges aren't lining up to anything. I believe so. Bridge. Nice. There we go. Kind of just want to make it a bit wider. And then the beauty of doing it this way, even though it is a bit unconventional, is I can just sort of isolate it. Smart duplicate the face. Move it over. Bring this guy over. It seems we smart duplicated it a little bit too much. But yeah, can move the pivot right there. snap it on, and we can just kind of cut out the shape we're going for. Mesh, combine, merge all of that, and it's good. Getting more details inside of there. The front starting to look a bit more interesting. One thing that I am a little concerned about is this gap here, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. We'll leave it for now. We're not going to really know how that all turns out until we start adding those little slits at the bottom for these little legs to go through. For now, I'm going to leave it. Let's see. I think we have enough time to at least make one of the keys, because we're only going to make one and then we're going to duplicate them around, right? So the keys are cool because they're kind of like a bunch of different parts. We have the lettering part, obviously is going to be a texture, but it has this sort of like inner part, this metallic ring that sort of holds it. And then at the bottom, we have another metal piece that seems to be sort of like the base that everything's attached to, and then the leg is welded onto there. So it's multi-layered. Let's go ahead and make those. Start with the cylinder. We're going to be making a lot of these guys, so I want it to be sort of good off the start. So let's say 32 sides. Is that a bit too much? It's a bit ambitious. We're going to have to cut that down. But 32 is easily divisible, so yeah, because if we bring that down, if we take away every other one to 16, it still looks good. I'm thinking about when we get to the low poly, like if we have 16 sides, that's good. So we can just delete every other edge when we get to that stage. But let's just focus on the shape of everything right now. So I'm making this in multiple parts. Let's start with the silver. The silver is probably the easiest, so it's just kind of like this kind of tall metal disc that dips in. So I'm just growing selection with a shift period after selecting a face, but I can hit Control E, extrude, bring this in, extrude this down, and then Control E, scale that in. It's kind of like this shape. And the way that I want to make these, let me just soften that. The way I want to make these is I kind of want to have all of these letters be a different mesh resting inside, so that when I smooth them, there's like this little gap between everything. I don't want it to weld there. I kind of want it to do the exact opposite. Like instead of softening in between, I want it to soften away from each other. So I want to put a different mesh inside. So I'm going to grab this bottom part, smart duplicate it up, and then extrude this down. Just reverse those faces so that they're proper. Put the pivot in the center of the bottom. Snap that there. And we can just bake all this down later on, right? But in ZBrush it really matters. So I like having that sort of different layers. So like this is a bad example, but if I hit 3 to smooth and 3 to smooth here, it's like this gap. That's what I'm going for. This does a pretty good job of representing that. So that's what I'm going to go for. Then of course we have the bottom part, the black part, and then the silver part is these little tabs that sort of pinch around it. So maybe I might actually want to make this all a little bit thinner. So something like that, and then I can duplicate this guy. Delete all of these. So we have a cylinder the same size. Snap it to the top. It almost seems like these are a little bit smaller because you can see it like a silver rim around everything, but they're really thin. I'm going to thin this out a little bit. And then, yeah, we have these metal tabs. So I think the easiest way you could do that is by adding a ring that sort of mimics the black part on the bottom, and then extruding and extruding in. And we can do those all individually, so they're a little bit different. They seem kind of imperfect. So Control E to extrude. Get that. It doesn't have to be perfect, so loosely lined up. It seems to have 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Can't really see it in any of them. There's at least 2. Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3. Perfect. We'll use that one as our reference. I feel like 3 of these guys is too much. 2 of them will probably do. So I'm going to extrude down level to this. Extrude again, and then I should probably change my move tool to component. I can extrude this in. Probably change this to component as well. Scale that down. So we sort of have that tab going over. Seems a bit large, so I'm going to pull that up. You can then bevel that so it's got those rounded tips. Merge the vertices in case there's any funny business going on. Yeah, so if this is thirds and we had 32 calculator time. Come on, calculator. Yikes, it's always slow when I'm recording. 32. This should be really simple math. Yeah, okay. Every like 10 and a half, but like this is just really loose. I think the best way to do this is literally just to like delete the faces and then just like smart duplicate and reapply them. Did those not delete? That was weird. So one there, one there, one there, one there, and then if we smart duplicate, we can put those on. I just want to make sure they're actually evenly spaced. That seems like even enough. Okay, smart duplicate. I'm going to change all these tools back to world. Holding J to rotate, maybe it'll give us the perfect angle if math is on our side. Doesn't seem like it today. So I'll roughly put that into position and then we'll vertex snap it in just a moment. And then we'll duplicate this part again. Okay, so let's get these guys welded perfectly into position. Snap, 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 snap. So all those should be good. And then this is the other new one. This one seems to be off by a decent amount, so I'm going to re-rotate it. Okay. Can go ahead and do a mesh combine. Merge all the vertices. So now we have these layers. This is where the text is going to be. This is the silver ring. And this is the black part. The black part seems to have the actual leg welded on. So we'll save that for later on. But that's more or less the key put together. It would make sense to group these with a Control G so that we can scale it appropriately. If I go to my reference, I'm just going to do this really loosely because we have all these like different size keys everywhere, but we have 11 across this way. To make sure I get this correct, let's put in a cube. Going to snap this to the edge, snap this to this edge, and as you can see the keys have like a decent amount of space between each side, so I'm going to scale it in just a bit past the bolts. We're just using this as more or less a ruler for where we're going to snap everything and align it to. So we have 1, 2, and then we have to add 9 lines in the middle. I have my insert edge loop tool here. Of course, it's an edit mesh if you want to find it. But yeah, I think the math on this is 9. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. We have 11 edges. Let's grab this group again. Scale seems a bit large, or maybe it doesn't. It's hard to really tell. As far as the height goes, seems like it's more or less level with the triangle, the first one. There's also a decent amount of space between the first key and this. I might want to raise these triangle pieces, but this is just a loose positioning for now, and then in the next part we'll focus on getting these guys into position and start the arms here. Especially because with these guys I'd want to rotate them all a little bit to really change up the bottoms, like those little connection pieces we made. I don't want them to all be perfect. So if I delete this for now. How's the size feeling on this? Yeah, I want this to be going a bit higher, that's for sure, which means these guys would also, maybe not. I think that the height might actually be good on that. But yeah, these guys definitely need to be raised up. I wonder if we can just do that right now, actually. Are they attached to anything? I think it might just be as simple as selecting those, honestly. I'm just looking at the space between this and this, because we know this guy is relatively close to the top, like we have that, and then this isn't too far off of it, so it's kind of like this height. We're gonna have to select just these guys now though, because we're getting some weird stretching, and lower them. Maybe what it is that we started this too low, but we could always quickly fix that as well. Because now the angle is like too much, right? We don't want these guys. I just don't want the angle to be as extreme. So I think what it might be is actually just pull these forward a little bit. Yeah. And then these gaps are a bit much, so I could extrude them, or not extrude them, but scale them in. Something more like that. Yeah, this is something we'll probably tackle in the next part. So having these keys here is a really good start. I'm really thinking that we maybe brought these a bit too high. Something a bit more like so. So they seem to be just a little bit lower than this bolt. This bolt seems low. Let's grab these guys, raise them up, go here, grab these guys, raise it up to match. Grab the bolts and bring them a little bit lower. It's a lot of repositioning right now, sorry. And I think that'll do it. Because now if I grab these guys, I'm liking the spacing on everything a bit more. And man, with the keys in there, it's all coming together. It's looking good. I'm really liking this. Like this angle here is really just showing like a ton of stuff going on. I'm really loving it. Sweet. I think that's gonna do it for this part. Thank you guys for watching. In the next part, we're gonna get the keys laid out, have all this stuff sorted out spacing wise, and if we do that fast enough, we might even take a stab at that. Sweet. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in the next part. See ya.